I looked at my transaction history last Sunday and felt a pit in my stomach. Not because of a massive purchase, but because of a dozen tiny ones. $5 here, $6 there. It wasn't just the money, it was the realization that I couldn't start my day without swiping my card. It felt like I was renting my own morning energy. I felt trapped by a latte. This is my real-time journey, not expert advice. Here is exactly what happened. To be honest, I've always been the person who rolls their eyes when financial gurus say, just cut out the latte. It feels so cliche, right? Like, oh, sure, if I stop drinking coffee, suddenly my thousands of dollars in debt will vanish. It feels insulting. But when I actually looked at the log, it wasn't about the math. It was about the dependency. I realized I was using that morning drive-through run as an emotional crutch. It was my little reward for waking up. It was the only part of my morning that felt premium when the rest of my finances felt like a disaster. So I made a deal with myself. I wasn't going to quit cold turkey because I know myself. I'd crash and burn by Wednesday. I just set a 1% goal. Bring coffee from home for 3 days. Just 3. Tuesday morning was the first test. I'm not gonna lie, I hated it. Standing in my kitchen at 6:30 a.m., fumbling with a bag of coffee grounds that spilled on the counter. I felt ridiculous. It wasn't a triumphant start. It felt messy. It felt like a downgrade. There was this nagging voice in my head whispering, "You work hard. You deserve the $6 a drink. Why are you punishing yourself over $5?" It felt like I was being cheap rather than smart. I poured the coffee into my travel mug, and it didn't have that perfect foam or the little cardboard sleeve. It was just hot brown water. I walked out the door feeling grumpy, clutching my thermos like it was a badge of shame. I wanted the status symbol of the takeaway cup, but instead I was stuck with my own mediocre brew. So Tuesday passed. I survived. I drank my mediocre home brew, avoided the coffee shop drive-thru, and actually felt a tiny spark of pride when I didn't see that familiar pending 5 on 85 notification pop up on my phone screen. But Wednesday was the real battle. It's funny how your brain tries to trick you when you disrupt a habit. On Wednesday morning, I was running 5 minutes late. That's all it took. The debt-free buddy inside my head started negotiating. "You're late. You don't have time to boil the water. Just go to the shop today. It's faster. You can do the home coffee thing tomorrow." It sounded so logical. It sounded like self-care. But I knew if I broke the streak on day 2, the whole 1% experiment was dead. I literally stood in the kitchen, staring at the kettle, feeling genuinely annoyed that I had to wait for it to boil. I forced myself to make it. I poured it into the travel mug, burned my hand slightly because I was rushing, and ran out the door. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't an aesthetic morning routine video you see on social media. It was chaotic and frustrating. But then came Thursday. By the third day, the friction eased up just a little bit. I ground the beans the night before. I had the mug ready, and when I drove past my usual coffee spot, I didn't feel that magnetic pull to turn the steering wheel. I just kept driving. Now, let's get into the spreadsheet because emotions are one thing, but the numbers tell the real story. I sat down on Friday to log the week, and I want to show you exactly what this looked like in USD. Usually my order is an oat milk latte. With tax and tip, that comes out to roughly $6.25 a day. Sometimes I add a muffin, but let's be conservative and just stick to the coffee. If I had gone to the shop Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I would have spent $18.75. That's nearly $20. For 3 drinks. When you see it leave your account, daily it feels like nothing. It's invisible money. But seeing $18.75 written down as a lump sum, that hit different. Then I calculated the home cost. I bought a bag of decent beans for $14. I used maybe, 1/10 of the bag? Let's be generous and say I used $3 worth of beans, plus a splash of oat milk from the carton in my fridge. Total cost for my 3 days of home brewing, maybe $4 waters. The savings, $14.75. I stared at that number, $14.75. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, debt-free, buddy. You saved 15. That's not going to pay off your student loans. That's not going to fix the car. And you're right. In the grand scheme of thousands of dollars of debt, $14.75 is a drop in the ocean. But here's the thing that really messed with my head. I looked at that number and realized that $14.75 is more than I earn in an hour of work after taxes. I essentially gave myself an hour of my life back just by boiling water at home. For so long, I've been looking for a magic bullet to fix my finances. A side hustle, a lottery win, a raise. But right here in my messy kitchen, I found free money. I put that $14.75 immediately toward my credit card balance. Watching the balance go down, even by such a tiny amount, felt oddly better than the caffeine buzz ever did. It wasn't about the taste of the coffee anymore. It was about the math. I had traded a fleeting comfort for a permanent dent in my debt. And honestly, the coffee on Thursday actually tasted pretty good. The biggest lesson I learned this week wasn't about the $15. If I'm being real, saving $15 isn't going to change my zip code. It's not going to make me wealthy overnight. But the victory wasn't financial. It was psychological. For the longest time, I believed that I needed that morning treat to function. I had built this narrative in my head that my day would be miserable without it. By proving that narrative wrong, for just 3 days, I broke a mental chain. I realized that my spending was often just a reflex, an automatic loop that I was sleepwalking through. This goes back to that 1% philosophy. The book Atomic Habits talks about how every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Every time I drove past the coffee shop, I wasn't just saving $6. I was casting a vote for a new identity. I was voting for future me, the version of me who is debt-free and in control, rather than current me, who is stressed and impulsive. That is the real power of the 1% mindset. It's not about depriving yourself of joy forever. It's about regaining the power of choice. On Tuesday, I felt deprived. By Thursday, I felt empowered. I realized that I get to decide where my money goes, not my cravings and not my morning routine. I know I'm not the only one fighting this specific battle. Maybe for you it isn't coffee. Maybe it's the vending machine at work, or ordering lunch, because you didn't pack one. Or that subscription you keep meaning to cancel. We all have that one small recurring leak in our budget that we tell ourselves is essential. But looking at my spreadsheet this week, I learned that the math doesn't lie. Those leaks add up not just in dollars, but in the control we surrender. Going forward, I'm not banning coffee shops forever. I love a good latte. But next time I buy one, it's going to be a conscious decision. A reward I planned for, not a desperate habit I feel trapped by. My 1% mission for tomorrow is simple. I'm going to make coffee at home one more time, take the exact $6 I would have spent, and immediately transfer it to my credit card balance. It's a tiny payment, but it's real. What is your 1% step? Can you identify your latte factor this week and swap it just once? Let me know your small win in the comments. I am not a financial expert or advisor. This content is for documenting my personal journey and for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research before making any financial decisions.